sides of the tracheal wall, section to the trachea, and section to the lungs. And normal lungs only. There's some fiber like orthosis and so on. You don't need to worry about that. I want you to know the structure of the normal lung. What you're going to be looking for there are respiratory passages in blood vessels. You should be able to distinguish blood vessels. Remember, the lungs are highly vascularized, lots of blood flow. Okay, this first line, you're looking at section to the wall of the trachea. Now, this is the windpipe. This is carrying air between the larynx and the bronchi. Again, you can follow along on the lab objective sheet. But under trachea, first off, the epithelium. So recognize the epithelium. What kind of epithelium do you have in the trachea? Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Same type of epithelium we see in the nasal cavity, nasopharynx, the inferior part of the larynx, below or inferior to the two vocal cords, the trachea, and the bronchi. Okay? And this is the epithelium, here out. That would be the lumen where the air would pass. Okay? Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. You can see, looks like you had a couple levels of nuclei here, which gives the appearance of stratification. But in fact, it's only one cell layer thick, so it's pseudostratified. The cells themselves are ciliated. You can see the fuzzy border here. And the oval nuclei indicate the cells are column-shaped. So pseudostratified, ciliated columnar epithelium. Embedded in the epithelium are these unicellular glands, which we see here and here and here. Look like little flash-shaped areas. Okay? A little break of cilia here and there. Those are the goblet cells. And those are unicellular or single-cell glands that secrete mucus onto the surface of this epithelium. That's what gives it the wet, sticky surface to trap debris in the air, like dust particles. And the cilia, beat in a fashion, has to sweep the debris up to the throat. You can either swallow it or spit it out. And that helps to filter or cleanse the air in the process. Okay? Now, deep to that, this is the connective tissue. And in the connective tissue, you have multicellular glands, which also secrete mucus. And that's what these things are. Okay? These are called seromucous glands. So the seromucous glands are multicellular. They're in the connective tissue. The single-cell glands that you see here, okay, are the goblet cells. And they both secrete mucus onto the surface of the epithelium, which again is ciliated, as you can see. And again, the cilia are not to move the cells because they're tightly packed. It's to move the debris, or I should say the debris-laden mucus across the surface of the cells. Okay? As we go more to the outside of the wall, we get this. What is this tissue? That is cartilage. Remember, cartilage is very distinctive connective tissue. The cells here are little cavities, okay, called lacunae. One of my students some time ago said, you know the Hawaiian word, lacunae, right? Well, that's the cell. These cells are chimerocytes, and they're basically isolated from one another in these little cavities. And this is unusual connective tissue, cartilage, because it has no blood supply. Most connective tissue, remember, has a good blood supply. So everything has to fuse through the matrix to supply these cells with oxygen nutrients. And you remember too, that in bone formation, with endochondral or cartilage bone, one of the first things that happens is you get a bony collar around the cartilage. What that does is shut off diffusion of oxygen nutrients to those cells. They die, the cartilage erodes, and is replaced by bone. So again, this is hyaline cartilage, which serves to support the wall of the trachea. As I said, all the cartilage and the respiratory passages is cartilage with one exception. And which one is that? It's the epiglottis. and that's elastic cartilage. And then you may also be able to see out here, smooth muscle, part of the trachealis muscle. And look at these things, it may be a little confusing at first because the trach is often kind of collapsed around itself, so it'll be kind of folded back or doubled on itself as well. Okay. So the smooth muscle, the hyaline cartilage, and in the connective tissue, be able to pick out these serum mucus glands, which we see in here. They're multinucleate. And then the goblet cells, okay, and then the cilia, and of course the epithelium itself, is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Any questions on this? Let's look at a section to the lung. Now, normal lung looks rather lacy. It's full of little air cavities. Most of what you see here will be the alveoli, alveolar sacs, and alveolar ducts. You can see various respiratory passages, as well as blood vessels, which I'd like you to be able to identify. We're going to start here. Now, I'll tell you right now, the largest respiratory passages you're going to see in these lung sections will be tertiary bronchi. And the easy way to tell them is by the presence of cartilage in the walls. When you get into bronchioles, there is no cartilage. So we have cartilage in the trachea, the larynx, of course, the trachea, and the bronchi, primary, secondary, tertiary. But once you get into bronchioles, there's no cartilage. So that's the first thing you should look for. There we have it. This is hyaline cartilage. So if you have any cartilage in the wall, okay, regardless of size of the tube, because they will vary in size, because remember they keep branching into smaller and smaller passageways, it is a tertiary bronchus, which this is. You see this one's fairly large. But again, you've seen cartilage here in the wall. So this makes this a tertiary bronchus. The dark line here are the nuclei, okay, which goes from pseudostratified ciliate columnar, the simple columnar to simple cuboidal, but you're going to see a dark line of nuclei here. Okay? And again, the key is the presence of a piece of cartilage in the wall. You can identify that as a tertiary bronchus. And again, they're going to vary in size and shape, and part of the shape will determine how they're cut. Okay? Right next to this tertiary bronchus is this, which is actually a blood vessel. You can see smooth muscle on the wall. This is full of blood cells too. This would be a vein or an artery. It's a vein. Relatively thin wall, large lumen, and you can see at least partially collapsed. Okay? Now here's some more respiratory passages. Again, they've got that dark line of nuclei here, and these two are connected. Now, you can see neither one has cartilage in the wall, which means you're either bronchial, a terminal bronchial, or a respiratory bronchial. Respiratory bronchial is very distinctive because they have outpocketings of alveoli. So what it's going to look like is, you got the wall, the nuclei here, and then suddenly it looks like the wall is disrupted, like right here. That's the alveolus coming off, which is simple squamous. So if you see one or more of these alveoli coming off, you know you're looking at a respiratory bronchial, beginning of the respiratory zone. This one, which is connected to it, does not have cartilage. Again, it's a bronchial, but connecting to a respiratory bronchial would be what? A terminal bronchial. So this is the end of the conduction zone. This is the beginning of the respiratory zone. But again, the respiratory bronchial will have one or more alveoli, terminal will not. Okay? If you look around here, what respiratory passageway is this? And how do you know? First thing, does it have any cartilage in the wall?
No.
It certainly does right here. So get used to identifying the cartilage again. Right? got cartilage in the wall, which makes it a tertiary bronchus. Even though it's much smaller than the other one, okay, the other one's cut more longitudinal section, this one more in a cross section. And again, you're going to see different sizes of tertiary bronchi because they branch into smaller and smaller ones. The key is, first of all, is there cartilage in the wall? If there is, it's a tertiary bronchus, regardless of size and shape. Okay? That's a tertiary bronchus. And again, you can see there's cartilage up here as well. And that's where we were before. What kind of a respiratory passageway is this one?
The dark one, the big dark one?
Yep, this one right here. What is it?
A respiratory bronchus?
Yes, very good. No cartilage in the wall. This is a blood vessel right here next to it. And you can see the wall looks pretty much intact, but here it looks like it's disrupted because you got alveoli coming off. Okay? So that'd be a respiratory bronchiole. And this again is a blood vessel next to it, a little vein next to the respiratory passageway. Often you see them in close proximity to one another. Okay? And here again was the original one we looked at. The tertiary bronchus up here. See, there's a piece of coverage there. There's one right there. We saw more as we went around the wall. Okay? Okay. And here'd be another one.
Tertiary?
No cartilage. That's a blood vessel there.
Oh.
Okay. So this would make it a bronchiole. Okay. And here, how about this one right here? What would this be? This is a blood vessel. Kind of folded, the tissue's folded, that's why it looks like it's superimposed. So you can see the wall here looks like it's disrupted again. You're in simple squamous epithelium. That's an alveolus, which means it's a respiratory bronchiole. And these are all alveoli here. That's mostly what you see. When you see like a little channel, it is full of alveoli all around the wall, that'd be an alveolar duct. Let me show you another slide here. So that's a blood vessel. Again, what would this be?
Respiratory?
Respiratory bronchiole again. You can see a lot of those. Okay? Respiratory bronchiole. How about this one right here?
Respiratory?
It's again a respiratory bronchiole. You can see the wall here, it looks like it's disrupted. You can see a little bubble coming off here. That's an alveolus. So it's a respiratory bronchiole. That's cutting cross section. What's this? That also is a respiratory bronchiole, but it's cut in longitudinal section. And you can see here's the wall, and again it looks like it's disrupted here, and you got alveoli coming right off of it. And then this one, cut in longitudinal section, you see it branches and goes off these passageways, which would be what? Alveolar ducts, exactly. Alveolar ducts. Okay, you can see they're mostly just simple squamous, a lot of alveoli coming off. So here and out here, alveolar ducts, branching off a respiratory bronchiole. Okay? And eventually they'll end blindly in a cluster of alveoli. You get down here then to an alveolar sac. All these little things here are individual alveoli. Simple squamous epithelium. And think about it, makes sense, because this is where gas exchange occurs. You don't want a lot of tissue there. And the thinnest you can get is a simple squamous epithelium. And that's also the wall, basically, of a capillary, which surrounds these alveoli.
You said the sacs are just like clusters of them?
Yeah, the stuff around here, this would be an alveolar sac, right around here. The
Are they
alveolar duct
normally
feeds
around
into
the
it.
duct or what?
Pardon me?
Do the sacs normally surround like a duct?
Well, the sac would be the terminal end of an alveolar duct.
Okay.
So it's like a stem going to a bunch of grapes. Think of the stem as the alveolar duct, and the bunch of grapes, the cluster of alveoli, that would be the alveolar sac. And then the individual alveoli, like the grapes in that bunch. Okay? But you see, most of the lung here, alveoli. That's why it has this lacy appearance to it. Look at that slide that's got tubercular lung, it's all congested. Doesn't look at anything like this because it's full of white blood cells, fibrous connective tissue to wall off the infection. Doesn't look anything like this, but you don't need to worry about that. I want you to be able to identify the normal one.
So that line going down to is that the duct?
What, here?
No, the long one.
Yeah, this is an alveolar duct. Very nice example. And here's another one here. Remember, this is three-dimensional, so it may have gone off the plane of section too. That's why it's much shorter. But you can see alveoli all over the place. Okay. Any other questions on this?
Could you show us another one with cartilage?
Show what?
Show some more cartilage?
Another one with cartilage?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find it. All right, here's one.
That's a big one.
So what would this be?
Okay, cartilage.
So what do we call this respiratory passageway? Tertiary bronchus, not tertiary bronchiole, tertiary bronchus.
Okay.
So when you're looking at these things, first of all, any cartilage in the wall.
It's tertiary.
There's cartilage, it's tertiary bronchus, okay, easy, regardless of the shape or the size.
Okay.
No cartilage, and it's a bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, or respiratory bronchiole. If it's got alveoli coming off, that's a respiratory bronchiole. No alveoli, and it's a terminal, it's a bigger one, and it's about the size of respiratory, then it would be
It's a regular one?
a terminal.
Terminal.
So bronchiole terminal. Now with the terminal, what I'll probably do is just give you one that's adjacent to the respiratory bronchiole, so there's no gap.
And the very first slide we looked at was
The very first, that was trachea.
trachea.